Hey everyone, welcome to the today's session, How a Small Business Can Leverage AI. I'm Bhuvan Desai, an experienced leader in tech industry, particularly in the fields of marketing tech or martech is what we call, and now working on technology, helping product engineering team to hire best talents across India. We are building an AI-driven platform, and our passion is to solve the hiring challenge with an ease, simple, and reliability. My passion lies in leveraging technology to solve real-world challenges and optimize business outcomes. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Tom Schreiber, an amazing human being and an experienced entrepreneur and CEO of AskCoder. And not only that, he's also managing a couple of other ventures. And with his knowledge and consultancy of AI, he's able to deliver an amazing thrive to a couple of other companies like Mission for Humans and other few more. Tom also have a rich background and a tech-driven business transformation history. So I think he's able to talk with us about how he can leverage an AI and has given an amazing exponential outcome on streamlining operations as well as customer interactions to small and large business. So I think Tom, welcome to our session and really eager to talk with you about what has been your journey so far in the AI and help our audience to know how they can leverage AI for their businesses.
Yeah, how are you doing? So I'm basically kind of talking about, I guess, three roles at the moment. So I'm Chief Product Officer at a company called Agivo. We basically do outsource property services we look after about over 1 million properties now across the UK, but we are expanding across the US as well, so North America. Yeah, so we work with Uplands in that context, but also I work with Uplands on my consultancy side as well. So we have 2 humans in our whole mission at Machines for Humans is trying to, very relevant for this, we're trying to support small businesses in adopting AI technology across what they do. And also the other thing worth mentioning that's relevant for this, I'm also chair of the AI steering committee for the RED Foundation, which is basically the Real Estate Data Foundation. And our whole mission is to help real estate or companies that operate within the built environment to adopt AI, but also understand AI, get to grips with AI, and realize it's not scary, and also kind of get value from AI as well. So yeah, that's the kind of context, I guess, that I'm coming from for today.
Awesome. I think that's also what I think people would be interested to know, because people with small businesses are really feeling scary about AI, or they're so intimidated about it that they would be not willing to invest much into that. So I think a lot of conversation around that will take it up. But Tom, I think AI is often associated with a big companies or corporation or big data or something. How can a small business with a very limited resources can start using AI to their advantage?
Yeah, I think when we talk about that, I think historically that's true, because if we look at 2 different types of AI, there's kind of the generative AI, which is kind of where we're at now, and then we've got the predictive AI, I guess, to simplify it. Historically, you used to have a big enough, reframing it a little bit. So AI is for people before I come back, because it might help frame that response a little bit. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I think the easiest way to describe AI, I think Steve Jobs did a very good explanation around what the computer is, and I think in that explanation, it's the Condor is the most efficient on the planet. But then when you take a human and a bicycle, so human compared to a Condor is very inefficient. We're very inefficient. But on a bicycle, the human becomes the most efficient animal. And he described the computer as a bicycle for the mind, right? So it makes us more efficient. And I think that's the same thing, taking that analogy a little bit further. You could probably describe AI as like a motorbike for the mind. So it's kind of computers the bicycle, but then AI is almost like a motorbike for the mind. So it's able to help us and enable us to achieve a lot more than we would be able to normally. That being said, we're still at a point where AI, at least for now, needs to be steered and controlled much like a motorbike, right? You can't just jump on a motorbike hands off and let it go wild. And I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. So we've kind of got to come back to it now. So we've got kind of two types of AI. We've got predictive AI and generative AI. And historically, large companies really be the only ones to benefit from AI, purely because they used to need a significant amount of data to make the AI draw any kind of insight or take any kind of action from it. So because of that nature, the small businesses typically very reliant upon a smaller number of data points, and therefore they wouldn't necessarily get the value from that type of AI. I think what you're seeing now is, you're seeing these large language models which have already been pre-trained on significant amounts of data, which means that actually a small company can significantly benefit from these AI models because they can benefit from all that additional context and data that those models are able to bring to the table. So that's why you're seeing right now, especially for us or lots of the small companies that I talk to, they're able to deliver or get pretty instant impact from using AI tools. Simply, let's not overcomplicate it. simply tools like ChatGPT or one of the other ones. Let's say we'll just refer to ChatGPT for the moment, but you're able to talk to it. You're able to kind of use it as a tool to refine your thoughts and your thinking. If you're maybe not sure about something, you can say, "Hey, just how would you tackle this?" And what you're getting is kind of the entire knowledge of the internet played back to you in a way that's consumable and easy to interact with. It's able to do good things like drafting documents, doing marketing content. Be very careful with it, because it's like a motorbike again. You can't just take your hands off and go, "Oh, I'm just going to take everything that it says as the right kind of, the right kind of." It would be a disaster basically if you ask ChatGPT to come up with a piece of content for LinkedIn and you just post that on LinkedIn without any steering or any direction. So it's about kind of refining it, making sure it's right. But yeah, long story short, I think right now small businesses can derive a lot of value out of generative AI specifically. That's not to say they want very good applications for other types of AI across their business. But if you're looking for some easy wins, I think only now it's become actually, the ROI is there for the smaller business.
Yeah. I think since the launch of first time the GPT launched the LLM, right, in front of audiences, I think till today, I think the cost has drastically reduced per token. So I think leveraging at least generative AI, I like that point that at least you start exploring it, so you start learning it, right? And then depending on your use cases, right, you can obviously leveraging generative AI today for your advantage, and then gradually switch to predictive when you have a immense data available in front of you. Yeah. So you talked about generative AI, you talked about predictive AI. So usually SMBs or even non-technical business owners, right? They usually don't understand more about AI. So if you have to explain that in a simple terms, and in each of this, like generative AI and predictive AI, how they can take this journey from this to this, how would you do that in a simple terms to a non-technical entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, if you look at the predictive AI side of stuff, it's very much about kind of looking at data points and kind of making predictions based on that. And then you've got the kind of that's kind of like the logical brain. The easiest way to describe it, that's like the logical brain, right? I see this data, therefore I take this action, or I make this prediction. And then you've got the kind of the creative brain, which is the more generative AI side of stuff. So the creative brain is the ability to kind of, and to explain kind of very kind of loosely how it works. It's I'm sure you know how it works, but essentially what it's doing is it's looking at kind of historical patterns in data, and then it's making not similar to prediction, but it's obviously already been pre-trained and things, but it's then making the next word prediction. But what it's also doing as part of that, every single word, their tokens, but for this we'll say every single word has a number. It's kind of like a vector, and then what it's able to do is to kind of understand the relationships between those vectors or numbers. So like it's very easy for the machine to then understand a kitten is to a cat as to a puppy is to a dog, because they have a similar kind of number relationship. So it's able to understand more than just predict the next word. It's actually able to understand the context between each one of those words. So it understands that a kitten is a small cat and a puppy is a small dog. So it's able to therefore predict the next word with much higher accuracy. That basically enables us to, generative AI to do things like generate entire press releases or generate entire pages of a book, because it does have a kind of an understanding of how real world concepts are related to each other, and that's just purely through these numbers or vectors. So that's kind of generative AI. So generative AI is like the creative brain. So you've got the logical brain, and then you've got the creative brain, both in AI, and then you've got the kind of the new stuff, which is supposed to be coming out. We haven't yet seen it, but from OpenAI, they say they're going to be they basically cracked the reasoning AI, or the reasoning part of the brain. So that's the ability to kind of look at some information and then make a decision that actually be able to reason based on what the objective or the goal that it's trying to achieve is. And so you kind of got those three types of AI: the predictive, the generative, and then the reasoning AI, I guess. So right now, the biggest wins for small business is definitely around starting with the generative AI piece. I think it's the cheapest, it's the most accessible. You can just get a free ChatGPT account. That's what I'd recommend, and then the rest, let's see where it goes.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think the creative brain, I think, and the name itself says, right, generative AI says a lot of general knowledge that he has gathered, right? Today, every human don't have a capacity to have a general knowledge that can be acquired throughout the internet or even across the world. So I think that has at least given us that beauty of having a person in our office who has a huge amount of general knowledge. You go and ask him, and he'll give you at least a contextual answer to what you want. So I think that kind of leverage can certainly be done by any small business today, where any general kind of information, if they are looking to get, I think they can obviously get from this creative brain, which you call it as a generative AI. I think there are new technologies also that people are using, right? RAG technology. So even if they have a small amount of data with them, I think they can still use RAG technology on that or LLM models to get that specific inputs or specific outputs that they are willing to. So even with the small data and the where they can, I think, leverage those part very beautifully.
So yeah, by combining those two, so you can basically right now you've got your own data, you can bring your own data to the table, you can bring your own documents to the table, whatever it is. But actually, we're launching a product specifically targeting real estate and property managers, basically enabling them to look at kind of all their leases that they have of their property portfolio, and they're able to really quickly upload those documents. We actually use GPT Vision to be able to look at all the information within those documents, extract it, understand it, and then put it into like a different format that they require to upload into their CSV or whatever, so they can effectively manage their properties. So that it basically means that instead of having to, when someone's calling you up, like a resident or something, and that resident saying, hey, am I able to keep a pet or a dog in my house? Rather than what they used to have to do is go and find the document, look in the document, scroll down to the right part. Okay, yes, I can see this, and then they need to go and respond. Now our AI is able to have that conversation with the person, automatically find that point in the document, pull that information, and say it straight back without having to bother with any of that stuff. So that shaved a good 5 minutes off a day alone, and that if that's a regular stuff that comes in. So those kind of small wins. That's something that, absolutely, you can bring your own data, and the generative AI models are really good at finding bits of information within that data. The only thing I would say is double check it. We've spent a lot of time in our models making sure that the output that it gives you is checked, because it has the way that generative AI works. It can hallucinate. It can say things that aren't necessarily accurate. Again, it's all about taking it back to that kind of motorbike analogy. Don't just hands off. It's there to do the pedaling for you, but you still need to check it's steering in the right direction and it's doing the right thing.
True. I think it has immense data with them, but I think it has a limited data, whatever is available till particular date with them. And I think if the GPT doesn't have the data, it would try to hallucinate rather than saying no. Many times that has been observed a lot, even from our side. So
and the reality, sorry, I was going to say the reason why it does that, it hasn't actually been in terms of, it hasn't been kind of framed towards a specific goal. In terms of the goal is to say, it doesn't really understand that the goal is to give you information that is correct. It doesn't have that. It's told it needs to generate information that sounds feasible and credible. So when they trained it, it was like, this is a good response. This is a good response, but there was no acknowledgement of whether it was an accurate response. But that's the reason why it does that hallucination. But apparently, OpenAI say they've solved it. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so I think there was a use case where we were using GPT earlier and different models, right, to extract few information from the CV, right, the CV of our candidates, right, and we were trying to check with the different models that can we predict from there whether the company's data that we are getting from the CV, are they product based or the service based, right? And most of the time when we observed is that if there are companies who has their Wikipedia page or who have their public presence very effectively, right, for them he was able to predict whether it's a product based company or a service based company. But for the smaller companies who doesn't have their public presence very effective, or they are the companies after 2022, right, then those information it was trying to hallucinate from the name. So let's say if there was a company, if it's like Azure Power, right, which was actually a sustainable energy company, then being Azure as a name, he was trying to portray it as a technology company, Azure into the name of it. So such kind of hallucination has been observed when there is no data out there for them. Yeah, so we have to be very careful. That's a good point. You talked about a very good customer interaction scenario where you have a documents, you give the documents, you extract those information, and those questions of customers that they have could be easily solved, and you can give an amazing customer experience. So I think that is the area I think where we have observed a lot of growth through generative AI, right? Where people are using generative AI to give an amazing customer experience to their customers. So is it possible for you to list down some of the some of the use cases where how smaller business have implemented AI in the customer services and leverage AI there to give an amazing customer experience. Even if one you are consulting or even any other examples that you have.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I have a nuanced thing of that. So I think a lot of people think using AI for customer service is like chatbots or voice assistants or whatever. I look at it slightly differently. I think ultimately good customer service is about the value that the customer gets from that interaction. And I think there's some interactions, you're absolutely right, that are not low level interactions, but the amount of value that the customer gets from that interaction is transactional. So that, for example, they need to report a broken, specifically in my role, because we just built this AI system that kind of helps triage property related issues. Look, sometimes I just need to report something that's broken, and that's my priority. I just need you to know that this thing is broken. The value that I get from that interaction is mostly being able to do it as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. Whereas if I'm checking into a nice hotel, the value that I get from an interaction with the concierge who, I don't know, gives me a welcome drink and makes me feel at home and welcome is a significantly different piece of value, and it's very hard to kind of automate that, and I don't think we should automate that. I'm sure in good time they probably will. But I think it's coming back to the value that the customer gets from that interaction. So I think when you ask about AI for customer service, I'd say actually some of the best applications, well, yes, chatbots and assistants are important and can enable a company to spend more time with the customer. So actually free up time to be able to take more high value conversations. For example, if someone's having a really difficult and a particularly emotional time, and let's say with a big emergency, then actually we should pass that over to a human who can provide empathy. But the only reason why that human's available is because our chatbot has managed to say this is not an important issue. We can just kind of solve this quickly with you and get it done for you. To save more people for those high value interactions. But I also think the bigger thing actually is being able to solve the back office stuff. Because the more you've got a lot of great people in companies sitting there doing jobs that they hate, that's just kind of, it's just filling in forms and it's just jumping through hoops for the sake of having to report to other people, etc. So the more that you can free up all that time and just get that stuff done efficiently, effectively, consistently, the better the end customer experience is always going to be of your company, because it gets done quickly, and also the human time can be focused on making the customer happy, right? So that can be focused on having those great customer conversations and things. So that's the thing I would say. I think anything in your company that doesn't immediately add value to the customer, work on how to automate.
Yeah. Something that's not adding a direct value to the customer, see if we can automate it, right? And if it's adding a direct value to the customer, see if we can have a human there to add a value, right? I think interesting. Nice. Yeah, I'm sure. I think the small businesses usually have this resource challenge also, right, with them. So for them, this is a good piece of advice where if they can invest some time and see what are the areas where a lot of back offices and a lot of activities being done where actually the customer value is not seen. I think that could be suddenly automated and with a very ease. Now, while automating and using AI, I think small business owners are also worried about the cost factor of using or implementing AI, right? How accessible or affordable it is in today's world.
Obviously, you got two elements, right? You got the developers or whoever you might need to actually kind of build those things. But again, just come back to it, like use ChatGPT. It's free. You can very easily prompt that tool to be able to get a lot of value from it without having to go to specialized third-party people trying to sell you products that are specifically for your sector. There's a lot of stuff you can do and achieve just by putting your own documents and your own knowledge and giving it a specific prompt that relates to what you're trying to achieve. There's a lot of immediate value. So there's plenty of courses, but I would just kind of just dive in, start using it. And then, even bizarrely, it's very, very good at telling you how to use it best. So if you've got questions, just be like, hey, what would be the best way for me to get this result out of you? And it will give you directions and guidance on how to do that. So you can use the AI tool to train you on how to get the best stuff out of it, which is quite neat. Yeah, I think expense is something that we're concerned with, but not terribly right now. In my role as Chief Product Officer at Eduvo, we're focused on getting the tech to work really well and delivering the best possible experience from that. What we are seeing across the board is pretty much every quarter or so, costs decreasing by almost 2/3 in some cases of those models. So I'd argue that once you've got the model working, then you can optimize costs, etc. So there's that side of thing. It's still going to be significantly, if you do it right, still going to be significantly cheaper than you kind of personally doing some of these tasks. I think there is that. And then when we look at the kind of if you want to build something more elaborate, like you need development time or actual developers, someone like Upwork, Upler's is absolutely fantastic for that, because Upler's you can reach out and say, look, I need someone to help me build this over the next 3 to 6 months, whatever that looks like, and that resource is really, really good to have on hand. But also what we're seeing is that resource, the human resource, is also being magnified significantly by AI. So there's tools like Cursor and things. You're able to produce a lot more code in a significantly shorter window than you used to be able to. So the cost of even coding things, developing things, is coming right down. And with some of the new models, maybe that OpenAI is touting, the ability for it to actually do some more advanced reasoning is likely going to make it significantly better in terms of the amount of ROI you can get from a human developer is going to go skyrocket. So then it does become a question of, I think every small business, really, the idea of being a tech business or a services business, I think you're going to see blur massively. I think the reality is, if you do provide a service, you're going to start to now see you're able to scale that services business much more like you would scale historically a tech business. So I think everyone is actually a tech business now. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah, interesting. I think if you combine these two pieces of advice, I think what it looks like is that every small business should start investing into it and not worry about the cost of today, because over the period when they will compare the cost of investment into other areas compared to the investment in AI, they would obviously see a much better returns, right, out of the amount of investment they have done. But obviously, I think it all depends on how you're leveraging it. So I think the next question comes to that. Is there a specific guidance or any specific course or any specific repository that people should refer to, or any tools, like you say you have some preferable tools that any SMBs should refer to when they start indulging their journey into AI?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one is kind of, you've got ChatGPT. I think is a great entry point for most people, because it's accessible, it's free to use the basic tier. There's lots of stuff you can do with it via APIs and things you can start to get more further down the line. But I think that as a tool is incredibly useful to wrap your head around how it works and its shortcomings. Just talk to it and its shortcomings and and what it's really good for. I think then once you start to get more comfortable in that, there are kind of vertical specific AI tools and things for each different sector that might pique your interest. Again, to be honest with you, lots that I find are kind of don't add significantly more value than just the ability to prompt ChatGPT or something like that in a specific way trained by your data. So I'd be careful when selecting tools as well, because when like with anything, when you do select a tool, you will naturally build your processes around that tool, and then it's going to be harder to move away potentially down the line. So it's, I would stay generic tool like a ChatGPT until you really understand the value that it's adding, and then if you need something specific for your use case, go ahead and look, and by all means do that. There are some other great tools that I use personally, things like Scribe uses AI you can like video, you can video yourself using a piece of software, and then at the end of it you just press done, and then the AI will then turn that into a guide for someone else to be able to use, which is really good for us in the software world, because we don't have to keep explaining how to use something for everyone. It's instantly the guide there. I think I use Circleback on all my meetings, so it's an AI that will just take all my notes and then it will give me actions at the end of it, much like just taking meeting minutes. That I find saves me huge amounts in the day, and also enables me to always have that. It's a confidence of knowing if I ever need some information back out of this meeting, I can go back into there and check it, which is a huge win for me personally. In terms of other AI tools that I use, there's some vertical specific ones as I mentioned, like we've just built a tool specifically for property managers that enables them to extract information from their leases. That was significantly painful for them previously, but we've been able to we've built a whole UI around it that basically enables them to very easily then take that information and make it usable and accessible and do stuff with it. So those kind of tools are always good. But start small, and then when you start to realize the value, you'll naturally start to seek out different tools that might be able to help you in those different areas.
Interesting. Yeah. I think people usually get confused between those off-the-shelf tools available or building the team in-house for AI, because they're really skeptical about the data sharing part out of it, right? So building it in-house, outsourcing it, or using off-the-shelf tools which are available. So what would be your take in?
It's a good point there, actually, just on that. So bear in mind that, you know, when you play around with ChatGPT, the free version or any of those versions, it's really, really important to not put any of your customer data in, or any data that's important for the business. It really is just about testing it, playing around with it. If you then want to go to the next step of actually using it for business applications, it's very, very important that you take the enterprise or the Teams upgrade. They have different types of accounts, but definitely read the terms and conditions on any AI tool that you do, because on the enterprise account, for example, none of that data then goes to retrain their model. It's less, you know, it is less important, I would say, for small businesses, that kind of that data set, because it's not like a large company where they're going to be, you know, existentially worried about losing significant amounts of data. But it's very important for GDPR and data policies, all that stuff, that no data ever goes to anyone else other than yourself, really. So I'd always recommend getting the enterprise account or anything like that for a ChatGPT. Sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, so if there are three options out there for them, right? Usually they get confused between using such off-the-shelf tools that are available, right? Or or building the team in-house, or versus outsourcing. So out of these three, which one would you recommend to start with?
I would recommend using like off the shelf, as long as, again, the data stays with you. So again, tools like ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever version of that you want to do, make sure you pay the money, so you can experiment on the free, just to give it a go, be like, okay, I understand what it is, and then definitely pay and make sure your data doesn't leave. So that stuff. But then when we talk about kind of whether you buy something off the shelf or whether you build it, I think really comes down to whether it's a fundamental part of your USP. So it does. So, you know, we have a rule, or I have a rule certainly in my role at Agivo, that anything that is going to drive our value proposition and be instrumental to our value proposition going forward, we should really try and build. We should try and keep that internally, because, you know, the AI that you train, what you're going to see is all those processes and how you do stuff as a business is going to be your USP, because you're going to be training the AI how to do that again. So you want to get it right, but also you don't want to outsource that kind of stuff. You don't want to be reliant upon, I wouldn't want to be reliant upon a third-party model that I don't understand and know exactly how it's working, and we can control and we can change, because that's our value proposition going forward. But, you know, smaller bits, like I mentioned there, you know, tools like Circleback to take meeting minutes, or, you know, some of those other tools, Scribe, etc. As long as the data policy is there and it doesn't leave, you know, it isn't retrained, I'm not going to go ahead and develop those tools myself. That doesn't make any sense. They do a good job, and it's not really driving my value proposition to the customer. So I'll outsource everything again that doesn't directly kind of derive my value proposition. But then spend the money. I think it's worth spending the money and owning stuff when it does actually drive that value proposition.
Interesting. I think one thing I'm going to take learning out of this discussion is that, whenever we make now decisions, I'll also ask this question to my team: is it going to add a direct value to our customer? If so, can we outsource this to someone and get these things done built quicker? I think I'll certainly take this as one of the learning in our conversation for sure. Interesting. I think about that data sharing and data privacy things, right? I think small business owners are also, and there are people who have actually dwelled into AI journey very well, right? Even they are small businesses, they are actually efficiently, I wouldn't say efficiently, but they are aggressively using AI to leverage different things. How do they think about ethical consideration when they are using AI? So what are things they should be worried about and take care of?
I mean, ethical considerations are very real. So, I mean, you mentioned it. You mentioned an example there about, you know, using AI on CVs, for example.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful when we're looking at any personal data, especially of our employees, our customers, or whatever data. And I think how we capture data and store data and things used to be, obviously, you know, used to be a concern. It is a concern, obviously, with GDPR. All that kind of stuff needs to be followed, and that's really, really critical that we do. But I think people maybe haven't realised, and are only now realising, with what's now possible with AI. We're starting to see, like, Netflix recommendations. The algorithms on your Instagram feed are starting to change from passive, i.e., they'll be learning from you. Now they're changing from passive to active. And what that means is they're now actually starting to influence the music I listen to. they are starting to now influence the things that I see on my feed. And they're starting to influence the type of friends posts that I see. They're starting to influence, and we're starting to see things like with CVs, for example. It's not just a question of, learning from the CVs. It's now going, well, maybe you want to see these 3 people because we think they're the closest match. That's a lot of trust you're starting to put into these models. And there's an ethical responsibility when we start to take actions or decisions on that data. And it's an area that I'm incredibly concerned about the transparency and explainability of those models. When we've got kids and whatever, on their social media feeds, and they're starting to see posts and things that are influencing their direction and future learnings, that's a big concern. So there are a lot of ethical considerations, I think, when we implement any AI tools. We need to think long and hard about what the potential impact it could have on a society basis, on an individual basis, on all that stuff. Obviously, there's responsibilities of data that need to be adhered to, but there's also responsibilities of when you roll out any AI tool and when you train any model or when you do anything like that, you really need to run a proper risk assessment and a proper evaluate the impacts that's going to have. For example, on our chatbot that's dealing and handling maintenance issues, as long as we get it right, we don't mess anything up, the impact's relatively small. It's helping people report a maintenance issue. But if you're talking about reviewing CVs and potentially allocating interviews based on what's in those CVs, there might be inherent biases in your organization or in historical CVs. I think there was a great example with Amazon where that bias, they had to shut the whole thing down because it was basically had a bias against women because there weren't as many women working for the company, right? So I think, draw out a list of what the impacts are. You can even use ChatGPT to kind of do that for you in some cases. Not do it completely, but it'll give you a good head start of like, look, I want to roll this out. Let me know what are the ethical considerations. What should I be mindful of? But there is a lot. So I'm always a bit wary of that. It's an important mark.
And that's what the sign of good human beings in today's world is, right? That they are worried about those ethical considerations of using AI. I think two interesting use cases you shared, and I would also love to add up some that. So earlier we used to have a recommendation for our recruiters, right? Where the recruiters usually get CVs and then we run an AI to build a recommendation out there. And so earlier what we were doing, we have our own AI model built on LLM, right? So that model is built on LLM. So we have our own data and our own model. What we were doing is we were purely giving that resume to the model earlier, right? And that was one of the mistakes that we were doing. And second is that we were influencing recruiter decision by saying them recommended talent and non-recommended. Right? So whatever AI was saying, recommendation and not recommended, we were influencing the decision of recruiters by saying they were not recommended, they were not recommended. However, I think this was triggered by our CEO, and he brought this point where he and tried to brought the solution to it in a very different way, where he said that I think still the recommendation being coming in, right? Let's explain why you are recommending and why you are not recommending, so that even if it's influencing, right, the human can still make their own decisions. And second, I think what he said is that why can we do a positive thing out of it and remove the negative things? So remove not recommendation things and just put recommended talents. So I think let them focus on high-end profiles or high-end resumes and let them make a decision on the resumes that AI feels that they are not recommended or they are not good. Let the human decide on them rather than we. And we try to measure the efficiency and all that stuff. So currently we are in the process of measuring what amount of efficiency increase will be there in case if we do that challenges. But I think that was his good suggestion, where adding up the reason to it would remove the influence that usually human would carry through AI.
Absolutely, and I think that's really, really critical. I think, like for example, you could just ask, like an LLM, what's the recommendation? Would you recommend this candidate, yes or no? And it'll say yes or no. But I think if you then say, well, please give me your working, like why specifically do we think this is a good match? You're absolutely right. And it says, well, this matches this matches this. You can at least, you can make a much more value assessment of, well, that's wrong. Or you can start to learn to trust it a little bit more. But I think you can't just, gone are the days of just trusting a black box algorithm to be like, I think this is good for you. I think it's really critical that we need that explainability.
True. And while we've just recently launched an AI screening tool where usually a lot of people get applications, right, on the LinkedIn. There are a lot of applications coming out there on LinkedIn. So we have given them a provision for them to export those applicants and import to our DB. So when we launched it, I think a lot of European customers came up and said that we are not allowed to upload any applicant data on any third-party platform because of GDPR and all that stuff, right? And that's where when we showed them that how this model is working, right? When you upload the CV, we remove those all personal information from the resume. So the AI has been used to remove this personal information, right? And the remaining information that is left, which is actually his professional journey, is being actually given to the AI to predict whether the things are better or not. So I think that's how I think over the period, right, we also got to know that okay, to have a better GDPR and being more ethical, I think it is important to not to share the personal information by using AI embedding and try to see if we are able to make decisions out of the actual data that is required out of there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting. I think there have been people, right, who would be listening today and want to take the first step with AI, and there would be people who are already using it. So I think for them it is very important for considering the ethical things that we discussed about. But people who want to take the first step with the AI, what would you recommend as a first simple and actionable step they can take?
As I said it before, I think the first bit is just to go on like Anthropic or ChatGPT and just literally have a chat and realize and keep chatting, realize its shortcomings, realize what it's good at, what it's not good at, and definitely don't take the first response. Try and kind of have a little bit of a collaborative relationship. That's obviously what I would find the first step is, and then I think it's kind of it's interesting because some people I see and talk to, great, that was interesting, and then other people will start to go, oh wow, okay, I could use this for this, or I could use it for this, and it very quickly diverges to some people being like they use it for everything. I mean, personally, I use it probably way more than I should do as a sense check, as a first version of something, and then I can iterate on it. But it does get rid of lots of the first page stuff, and I'm using it now. I don't really Google anymore. I would use that as my go-to. I asked it to convert a recipe the other day into, because I don't have any scales in my house, I asked it to convert it into the cups instead of scales, and it did a great job. Everything just put it into cups instead of grams, which is really, really helpful. So I use it for, I find opportunities for it all over. So I think that's more just up to you as an individual. You'll either kind of look for opportunities or you won't. But I think that's a really good starting point. I think they recently did a survey of C-suite companies that are adopting AI, of these companies, which companies are adopting AI well, which ones aren't. And I think the biggest deciding factor of whether a company was starting to adopt and get gains from AI is whether their board, whether the senior people on their board had actually ever used an AI tool, which makes sense, right? Because once you understand it, you understand what it can and can't do, and you can allocate budgets accordingly and all this kind of stuff. So that's the first step. I would say try it, give it a play, see if you like it. And the other thing is, for me, is not be scared. There's a lot of fear that goes around, and there's a lot of what if this is taking my job? What if I don't understand it, so therefore it's alien to me? Lots of small businesses that aren't very tech, and it can be scary. What I would say first is AI is probably one of I think somebody said it, I don't remember, but it was AI is one of the first kind of technologies that actually can kind of understand us rather than us have to understand it. And I think that is true. It is very accessible. So it is accessible. Give it a go. See how you get on. I think that's the only real advice that I would give.
Interesting. And for the people who have already entered in the journey of this AI, already using this AI or aggressively using this AI, right? How do you foresee? What do you foresee AI for the small business 5 years down the line, and how it is going to evolve AI?
That's a really good question. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out with the new models. There's inherent problems right now. We talked about hallucination. We talked about its inability to reason right now. You've got the logic brain, you've got the creative brain, but right now it's not very good at reasoning. And until you really crack the reasoning part of it, it's going to be able to do small jobs and tasks, but it's never going to be able to kind of take over large chunks of what businesses do. It may do for some enterprises, but it's going to be very expensive to get to that point because it's still quite niche in its area of ability, and it needs a lot of kind of supervision right now. But if we do the next models or whatever, if they do start to crack some of that reasoning and they manage to reduce the hallucination, that means you require a lot less effort and supervision. So I think across the board, you'd probably see very quick adoption. And I think, again, it's not unlike, I did a branding project for a company that was a prop trading company. So they did trading. And back in the days, they used to trade, I don't know what I had to as well, but they used to trade on the trade floor, right? They'd be buy, sell in the pit. And there's one company that I was doing work for. is now one of the largest electronic prop trading companies in the UK. And the only reason why they are that is because very early days, they were like, this guy was like, I don't understand computers. He was a trader on the floor. He's like, I don't understand computers. I'm going to buy a computer and I'm going to learn how to use this piece of software. So he did, and he started doing that, and then he hired, they hired another couple of people, blah, 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 and then they grew that way. So there are huge opportunities when tech fundamentally changes, which I do believe it is doing. The shift from offline to computers to AI is a similar shift. I think you're going to see a lot of opportunities right now if you're willing to lean in as a small business and go, right, let's really look at everything we do as a business. Let's look at what the high value to the customer is and what we think AI can be doing in that to deliver value. What are the easy wins? What should we be looking to kind of automate with AI, etc. over time? And I think if you start to do that now, you'll very quickly get a massive advantage in the marketplace, and it could enable you, depending on what your ambitions are as a small business, but it could enable you, like that prop trading firm, to go from one computer to thousands of people in your company very, very quickly. But you've only got a window. So I think it's important for people to realize that if you were going to be setting up a prop trading firm now, good luck. Well, I mean, you will be fine, but you're never going to get that kind of quick level of scale that you would have done that they had at that specific moment in time. So the opportunities are there now. So I think in the next 5 years, you're going to start to see businesses that have adopted AI early and taken it seriously now. You're going to see doing very, very well and scaling quickly. And you're going to see the people that are kind of laggards and letting it late. They're going to really struggle, I think, to catch up. So yeah, I'd get the groundwork in now. So if I was a small business, I'd make sure that I'm always thinking in 5 years' time, what's this process going to look like? Let's assume it's all going to be AI. What do I need to do now today in terms of my data, in terms of my systems, everything, to make sure that when it does happen, we're really, really ready?
We are really ready, yeah. I think there is an interesting book called Blue Ocean. I'm sure you might have read it. Yeah. It says this very beautifully. I think value innovation is what they usually trigger to, right? And they say that there is always a blue ocean available in the red ocean market that you are currently. You just need to keep thriving to identify that value innovation in that red ocean and can create a blue ocean inside the red ocean itself. So I think that's where today we are in the state of where most of the small businesses are competing with large businesses and with their competitors. But I think if they can identify those value innovation with AI, I think they would surely be big corporations tomorrow.
What's that book?
Blue Ocean.
I'm going to read that. Blue Ocean. I'll have a read.
Yeah. It's a beautiful read. I think you'll love it. Perfect. I think we talked a lot about. We talked about generative AI. We talked about logical brain, creative brain. I think that's an interesting concept which I wasn't able to relate to, but I can now relate very nice. I think that automating or using AI for back office work, which is not directly adding value to the customer, is an amazing thing. And we talk about the ethical consideration while using AI, data privacy of how we can leverage it. I think lastly, I think what is, if any specific use case you can share with our audience where you have leveraged AI into operations or into your businesses and you have seen a sustainable growth out there, which would have not been possible if you not used AI earlier.
Yeah, I mean, so the two big ones for us that, the two really big ones that we've done is we built, as I said, an AI assistant based on all of our, so Agivo look after about over 1 million properties across the UK. We have a load of about, 10 years, over 10 years, many more than 10 years, probably like 15 years of data from those calls that have come in from our residents or from our clients' residents. And we've got a lot of script information, etc. that comes, so we've scripted out. We've learned what questions we need to ask and able to make sure that when we have to call a contractor or when we have to go and fix the issue, we have all the information to hand. So there's a lot of knowledge that goes in there, and we've put all that knowledge into our own assistant. Now, when we talk about whether we wanted to build that ourselves or whether we wanted to pick something off the shelf, we chose to build it ourselves because that is a fundamental part of what we do, and it's a key value proposition for our customers. So we want to own that. We want to make sure we can craft it and can be very controlled about how that presents itself. So that's why we built that ourselves. And now we've been going live on a subsection of our clients, and we've successfully got some really good stats out of it. We're achieving like an 82% containment rate. That means like 82% of our conversations haven't had to leave the assistant, which is a really big win. We've had about 1,000 conversations in total. And, there's obviously ROI for that. The ROI is significantly, the cost per conversation for our AI is significantly cheaper by about 10x or something like that. But for us, it's interesting because we're also hiring more people, because what we're seeing is we're able to do a better job at what we do. It frees up more time, and we're able to then deliver a better service. So it's kind of not about job cannibalization or anything like that. It's actually about, well, it's making us significantly more competitive as a business. We're able to serve the low-hanging stuff cheaper, and we're able to deliver more, allocate more kind of that valuable human resource to that kind of those other calls that maybe need more attention. So that's been a really big win for us, and really good results so far. So we're really happy with it. And the other thing is that around that data export piece, we're able to kind of save customers around 10 minutes per document, but then also we're able to kind of instantly answer their questions rather than digging in. So that's giving them, I think, overall, we're delivering like a 4x ROI within 2 years, which is pretty substantial for a tool. So yeah, I mean, that's the way you think about it. We think about it. There's some AI some things are not ready for AI right now for us. Some things that are, but we're trying to aim for, when we do the assessment, we look at it and go, what is the ROI within 4 years? So what's the ROI within 2 years? Is it going to be a minimum of 2x, something like that? And otherwise, we'll probably park it for later until the cost of that becomes a little bit cheaper. But no, so far the main projects that we've done have really delivered. It does take work though. It's not like overnight. There have been many frustrations in training that AI chatbot, the AI assistant. There have been lots of blockers that we've had to try and work around. It doesn't always do. It's like sometimes working with AI is like wrestling a bear. It's like you have to be like, right, I'm not going to be able to take this. I have to go around another way because that way doesn't work. But you do get the rewards in the end.
Yeah, true. I think building using AI is just like building any product, right? You have to iterate a lot. You have to juggle a lot. I think you may see a lot of failures in start, but eventually it would pay you off well if you have a right strategy and right execution in a plan. So yeah, interesting, Tom. I think it was amazing talking to you. I think this ends with our conversation, and it was a pleasure talking to you, Tom. And I'm sure if we'll have deep dive into such discussions further, we'll surely reach out to you, have such conversation and learning from you.
Cool, man.
Thank you very much, Tom.
I've learned from you, so I'll take away that book recommendation. And yeah, cool. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you.